Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Really excited for today's episode because we are kicking off a two-part series on resilience and adaptability. So, today's episode is going to be the first episode of our two-part series, and we're going to talk about resilience. And what we're going to lean into today is why resilience is important. We're going to look to provide some different language on how to reframe resilience and maybe how we think about or have traditionally thought about resilience. And we're going to think about why it's important as it relates to who we are, how we show up, our goals. As always, we're going to look at it through a few different lenses. We're going to pull in some of the athletic identity aspect of things. We're going to look at high performance. We're going to look at business, entrepreneurship, all of the things that I bring to the table. And as those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while now know that we always touch on these different aspects. We're going to bring in a career piece. We're going to bring in a health component. We're going to bring in a human performance aspect. But we're going to talk about resilience, and we're going to redefine it to really think differently about what it means and why grit alone probably isn't enough. So when we think about resilience, I think we so often go to this ability to kind of grind it out, drive through, put our head down. Those are all fine skills and certainly ones that we need to deploy from time to time. But I want to provide a little nuance, and I want to talk about resilience to the extent that, what if resilience isn't about pushing harder, but about knowing when to bend? So what if resilience isn't about driving, but knowing when and how to bend, how to pivot, how to adapt, how to think critically in the moment and understand what specific skill set needs to be deployed so that you can be resilient? And there's just so many times. I mean, I think one of the core tenets of life, of the human condition, of anyone who's ever pushed and strove for anything is resilience. You have to build a resilient body. You have to build a resilient business. You have to build a resilient mindset. You have to build resilient relationships. Literally, it touches every single part of our lives. And there's certainly so many instances where I know, for me personally, resilience has been the core tenet of what's allowed me to keep going. Specifically, if I think about resilience, I'm going to give you a great example here. So the classic version of resilience is, again, one where we're gritty. We put our head down, we do the work, we push forward at all costs. Let me give you a personal story of a time that backfired to set the stage for why I think it's important to reframe and open up the conversation, the definition of resilience. So several years back, I was running a 100-mile race. I'll fast forward through all the kind of nitty-gritty details, but ultimately what happened is that around the 75 to 80-mile mark, I started to get a really intense pain in my ankle and lower leg. I had been running really, really good up to this point. I was well on target for my goals. I was feeling great. And then the wheels started to fall off, as they so often do. And what I wasn't able to see in that moment was that my ability to grind it out, to be resilient, was actually the thing that was holding me back. And me being short-sighted caused what ended up being a ripple effect for the next 2 to 3 years of my life. So what I did, the action that I took was I said, I'm tough, I'm resilient, I'm going to keep grinding. I ended up running 50K on what ultimately was a very injured lower leg. I had a series of issues. I should have stopped. It was horribly painful. I really wasn't able to run. I basically drug my leg for 50K. And I'm not saying any of that to make me sound tough or to stroke my ego. I'm saying that to let you know that it was so clearly obvious that I should have bowed out. It wasn't a big deal. I had done other long races. I would have gone on to do them again and have gone on to do them again. But that seemingly resilient decision put me back several years. I ended up dealing with a string of setbacks, had to cancel several races, take time off of running, hundreds of hours of physical therapy and mobility work and body mechanics work, and the list goes on. All I had to do was stop, and I still would have had an amazing 75-mile run that I would have been proud of. So when we mistake grit for resilience, what it ends up costing us is our energy. It costs us our health. It costs us our ability to continue to make long-term progress. And so I want to be very clear that I think we've been kind of largely misunderstanding resilience. And let's dive in. Let's set the stage for why have we been misunderstanding resilience? What is the narrative? What's the backstory that's created this narrative that really, I think, is more pervasive than so many of us even recognize? And first, I think it comes down to cultural programming. So let's talk about the cultural undercurrent that has created and gone into us feeling the way that we feel about resilience. And there is no better statement than the one that we're all familiar with, which is no pain, no gain. Right? So if I don't continue to suffer, if I don't continue to be in pain, if I don't push forward at all costs, if I'm not willing to sacrifice at all, then there's no gain. Now, as always, there's nuance here. So absolutely, we have to put ourselves out there, right? Absolutely, we have to sacrifice. Absolutely, I think when we want to accomplish incredible things, when we put big goals in front of ourselves, when we hold ourselves to a high standard, there is an inherent amount of sacrifice. There is an inherent amount of discomfort. Now, I'm careful to not use the word pain. I don't think that we should be in pain. I don't think that it's necessary to suffer, but again, sacrifice, discomfort, friction, 100%, right? I've talked about this at length on this podcast, that in order to be someone different, we have to do different things. We have to take different action. And so that is going to elicit an inherent opportunity for friction, for discomfort, because growth comes on the other side of that. But the distinction that I want to make is that there's an opportunity to expand our definition of resilience, right? We expand how we think about resiliency. We expand how we think about how it's deployed specifically in key areas of our life. And I don't think that no pain, no gain is serving us. Again, there's this cultural undercurrent. We've been exposed and pre-wired to come into situations with an inherent mindset that is resiliency only has one definition. The other cultural programming piece of this is that hustle culture. We are in a place right now, and have been for a while, that celebrates exhaustion as a badge of honor. If you're able to get out of bed in the morning and you're exhausted and you're able to continue to push forward, that's not seen as a red flag. That's seen as a badge of honor in many, many circles, on many platforms, in many spaces, in many verticals and communities. Culture, hustle culture celebrates exhaustion, and that's seen as a badge of honor. Again, no pain, no gain. What we say is that we brand that as resiliency. We even brand that as we have determination. We brand that as we have discipline. And again, I've talked about it at length. Discipline is an incredible skill. It is required. It is one that needs to be honed. I don't think this is what it looks like. I don't think that exhaustion and discipline are synonymous. And so there is this cultural programming, this undertone that certainly has set us up to have a singular view of resilience. So why does this matter? Why is it flawed? Why can't I wear exhaustion as a badge of honor? Why can't I take a no pain, no gain approach? Why is a more nuanced understanding and narrative around resiliency important? Well, first, it leads to burnout. So if we continue to push, at a certain point, we will collapse. There is no world where burnout isn't what's on the other side of this mentality, right? There's no world where burnout isn't part of the equation when we have this singular view of resiliency. Disengagement. We pull back, we disengage, we're not present, we're not able to show up for the things that matter to us, right? We get singularly focused, we put blinders on, so we have a disengagement that leads to the erosion of relationship with ourselves, relationship with others, our connection to the thing that we're trying to do, the connection to our why behind why we're doing it and why does it even matter in the first place. And then there's a physical breakdown piece as well. If again, exhaustion is our badge of honor, if our ability to continue to show up regardless and continue to pretend like it doesn't matter, and we name that resiliency, we name that determination, we name it discipline, then you will break down physically, right? Our bodies can only take so much. I've been here, right? When I was in my early 20s, started my first business, I thought that I had the ability to push further than most people. I had come from an endurance background. I had done some of the hardest races in the world. I had raced at high levels. I thought that I had the ability to build a level of resiliency that was unlike any other, right? No one else could do what I did. And so I pushed some more. I pushed some more, right? 100-hour work weeks, 120-hour work weeks, no sleep, 2 hours of sleep a night, workout every day. I still showed up. I still checked the boxes. Well, what happened? Fast forward a few years, I went to the doctor for a checkup. High blood pressure, right? I was 27 years old, 140 pounds. I was racing, had come off of racing with some of the best athletes in the world, looked healthy. The doctor gave me 2 weeks. If I couldn't get my health in check, she was going to put me on medication at 27 years old because my body had broken down, right? Physical breakdown, burnout. That's what had happened. There's no road, trust me. And it might take a while. That was several years in the making, but there's no road that doesn't lead to those things. And I love Adam Grant. He has a quote. I'll just I'll summarize it. And what he says is, resilience is not about how you endure; it's about how you recharge. So if we think about the root of that, resiliency is really our ability to come back and keep doing it. Are we resilient? Are we strong enough to stay in the game? Are we strong enough to continue to train, to continue to grow the business, to continue to pour into the relationships, to continue to do the thing? That's really where resilience shines the brightest. And so I love that quote from Adam Grant. For those of you, if you're not familiar, check out any of his incredible books. But he says, again, resilience is not about how you endure. It's about how you recharge. And, there's just so many examples of this. Again, we have the athletes that, we're praising marathoners for finishing on broken legs, right? Short-term glory versus long-term injury, right? Finishing one race. And again, my personal example, to then ultimately have that backfire for years and ultimately maybe never be the same. We have the business owner, the entrepreneur, the high achieving career individual who, burning out in the first 2 years, right? Working my example again, I've been there, the, 100+ hour weeks, the no sleep, the do it at all cost, work harder than everybody in the room, but we don't make it past a few years, right? Because they equated the long hours with impact, right? I thought that if I worked more, that created more. It didn't. Working more actually detracted from my ability to be my best. It detracted from my ability to stay in the game, to stay healthy, to stay connected, to interact with my team, to have great ideas. The list goes on. So that's I think why we've misunderstood resilience. I want to talk about the science of resilience. Before we get into the nuts and bolts here, I want to talk about what is it, right? So we've laid the groundwork. Why do we feel the way we feel about it? What are the opportunities for an upgrade? Why is it bad? Let me rephrase that. Why does it not serve us to think about resilience through this singular lens? But what is the science here, right? Why is resilience even a word that we are familiar with? Why is it something we're connected to? Why do we have thoughts and feelings and opinions about resilience? Well, the psychological definition is the ability to adapt and recover from stress and adversity. So there's a few key pieces here. It's the ability to adapt. I think this is key, right? It's not the ability to push through. It's not the ability to drive harder. It's the ability to adapt. When I think about adaptation, I think about looking at a data set. I think about looking critically and unemotionally at the information in front of me, and then adapting based on what's best for the desired outcome. So it's the ability to adapt and recover from stress and adversity. So I'm not overcoming stress and adversity. I'm not pushing through. I'm not besting stress and adversity. I'm recovering from it. It happened to me. This stress or this adversity was placed on me. It's something in my life. It's an injury. It's a challenge at work. It's a challenge at my home. How am I going to deal with that? Well, I'm going to adapt. I'm actually going to recover. And I think that's fascinating. That language, I'm recovering from stress and adversity. I didn't maybe have any control over it. So the thing happened to me, this stress or this adversity, this thing that created adversity. But now I'm going to take a beat. I'm going to recognize that I need to adapt. And because of that, I'm going to look at the landscape in front of me, and then I'm going to recover from this thing that happened. What does recovery mean? It means that I'm going to take a second. I'm going to process. I'm going to give myself time to rest. I'm going to make sure that I take this information and I learn and grow from it. I'm going to use it as a springboard to be better next time, to be more prepared, to be a better person. Again, I'm going to do something different to be a different person. So how do we define a resilient person? So along with that definition, this is from the APA, by the way, key traits of a resilient person are as follows. They're realistic optimism. So they see the challenge, but they believe in growth. Right? So they see the thing in front of them. They're not toxic optimists, which are there's no problem at all, right? Because that's not good. I think we all know those people. But we have realistic optimism. So the individuals, the key traits of resilient people is that they see the challenge, but they believe in growth. Next is flexibility. So their ability to adapt and pivot and approach, but not their identity. This is a big one. A couple episodes, we talked a lot about identity. This has been a common thread. I weave this in a lot. I think this is a critical piece, right? How do we do these things without making it mean anything about us, without losing sight of who we are, what matters most to us? So often when we talk about these things, we make it mean something about us. We make it mean that we're broken or we're not good enough or we didn't do it right no. Flexibility, right? It's the ability to pivot an approach, not an identity. And the next one is connection. I think this one's huge. I didn't see this coming when I was looking up the information, preparing for this episode. I think maybe inherently I thought that it would be in the mix, but the fact that literally the top three traits of resilient people as defined by the APA, and the third one is connection. So community multiplies resilience. When we don't operate in a silo, when we ask for support, when we communicate clearly what we need, right? How we need to be supported. When we have people around us that support our shared mission and vision and goals and values, the community multiplies our ability to be resilient. It multiplies our ability to see that within the opportunity or within the challenge lies the opportunity, right? We can see examples of that played out. I've felt no more resilient in my life when I was around people that dealt with really hard shit and got on the other side of it, and I could see that they were better for it. And they were better for it not because they were hard-headed, not because they were tougher, not because they kept grinding, but they were truly resilient. They took a beat. They adapted. They pivoted. They didn't make it mean anything about them. It didn't change their identity. They showed up. They listened. They recovered. And then they were better on the other side of it. They were more resilient. So community multiplies resilience. And there's so much parallel here. I'm sure that you're picking up on it. There's so much parallel to the physiological aspects of what we go through as athletes. And like I said at the top of the episode, we're gonna bounce back and forth here. We're gonna look at how this impacts all of these areas of our lives. But we know that stress plus rest equals growth. That is the equation for fitness. And so stress happens to us. We put it on our body, we train, we push ourselves, we stay consistent. Then we have to rest. So we also know that fitness doesn't actually happen during the bout of stress. You don't get more fit while you're exercising. You get more fit when you rest. So on the other side of exercise, your body takes that stress. During rest, it understands what it needs to do to compensate, to pivot, to adapt. And then we move on, right? Then we have growth. And I think, there's a great piece there that we can learn from life. There's no better opportunity, I think, to frame resiliency than with that simple equation. Stress plus recovery, so stress plus rest equals growth, right? Our nervous systems need downtime. So your muscles, your aerobic capacity, your mental bandwidth, your ability to show up at work, all of these things are tied to your nervous system, and they need downtime to rebuild. And there's a great data point here. Again, we're touching on all points, all areas of your life. There's a great Gallup study that was done. 75% of employees said that burnout affects their health and performance. 75%. This is across multiple industries. So it's not vertical specific. It's not industry specific. 75% of employees, this was in the United States, reported that burnout affects their health and performance. So this is critical, right? It affects their health, so how they feel, and it affects their performance, how they work, how they show up, how they think, how they contribute, how they collaborate. So it's an imperative in every single area of our lives. So how do we build real resilience? So now we have the science here, right? We understand what this actually looks and feels like, how it impacts our body, our mind, our emotional, physical, mental state. So how do we build real resilience? There's a simple framework, 3 R's, easy to remember. They are recovery, reflection, and relationships. So again, how do we build real resilience? We do that with 3 R's: recovery, reflection, relationships. Let's talk about recovery. Sleep is your superpower. So if you can sleep 7 to 9 hours a night, depending on who you are as an individual, it's proven to increase performance and decision-making. We know that if you could bottle sleep, if you could bottle the impact that sleep has on you, it would be the most potent drug that's known to man. What sleep does for you, what it affords your body, is like nothing else. No supplement, no diet, no amount of exercise, no amount of meditation or breath work. Sleep. Specifically, consistent sleep. Specifically, even more, a consistent sleep routine. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. Get enough sleep in that period of time, right? If you want to go to bed at 10, wake up at 6, right? If you want to go to bed at 10, you can wake up at 5, 7 hours of sleep. Know what works for your body. You also have to have good quality sleep. But first, recovery, right? So the first R is recovery. Start with sleep. It's the easiest thing to control. And we want to get 7 to 9 hours, and we know that it just impacts every single area of our life. Next, in the recovery vein, little micro breaks. So little small pockets during the day improve productivity, decision-making, and our overall general well-being. So what's a micro break? Literally 30 seconds. Just sit back in your desk. Take 10 breaths. Stand up for 30 seconds. Do a couple laps around your desk. Do 5 push-ups on the ground next to your desk. Right? Small moments. Not insurmountable, not naps, not deep meditative anything. Literally micro breaks. 30 seconds to 60 seconds throughout the day. Try to do it 3 to 5 times a day. Small moments of recovery, right? Small moments just to take a breath, get a little bit more oxygen, give your brain a second, right? Microsoft did a big study with micro breaks. They saw 13% lift in productivity when their team did micro breaks. And they implemented micro breaks, again, 30 to 60 seconds, small things a few times throughout the day. You don't have to leave your office. You don't have to leave your desk. You don't have to have extra equipment, extra gear. You don't have to put it on your calendar, just small moments. Second R is reflection. So resilient people process failure differently. They ask, what did I learn? Not, why me? This is critical, right? Reflection. The only way that adversity or setback is a problem is if we didn't learn from it. So the only way that's bad. Now, I'm not advocating or not saying that it's not problematic, troublesome, challenging in the moment. But ultimately, if we zoom out, we take the macro view of our life, and we know that it will only be a season, it won't last forever, then the only way that thing's truly bad is if we didn't learn from it. If we take some time to reflect. That's why reflection is so important as it relates to resiliency, is because it allows us to build the process. It allows us to take in the data. It allows us to pivot and adapt, like we talked about earlier. So again, resilient people process failure differently. They ask a different question. And the question is, what did I learn? Not, why me? And I think that's, if you start there, if you just take one instance, one thing that feels friction-filled, one thing that feels problematic, troublesome, and instead of saying, why is this happening to me? I can't get ahead. What's happening? Why is all this crap? When it rains, it pours, blah, blah, blah. Just think, ask the question, what did I learn? Or what is to be learned here? In this moment, in this season, in this experience, what's to be learned? And then next, if you can take it a step further, is a really easy journal prompt. Again, you don't have to journal. You can write this in your phone, on your computer, send an email to yourself, whatever it is. But the journal prompt is, what is this setback teaching me that success couldn't? And I love this question, right? We all know that we learn more from our failures than we do our successes. The most successful people in the world have failed the most. The people that we look up to have just had more failed experiences. The best athletes failed the most times. It doesn't matter if they're gifted, if they're genetically, superhuman. You still have to. You can't dodge the bullet of having to put in the sets and reps and having to fail enough times to ultimately be successful. And so, again, the prompt is, the thing that I would encourage you from a reflection perspective to build on is, what is this setback teaching me that success couldn't or can't? And that allows you to reframe how you think about setback, which ultimately is going to build a more resilient mind, a more resilient body. Again, we're talking about building real resilience. The third R, relationships. So we talked about community earlier, right? We know that community is a key piece of what actually allows us to shift, what actually allows us to see what's possible, right? Resiliency compounds when we have community around us. We know from an entrepreneurial perspective, in some of the industries that I work in, specifically in health and wellness, we know that entrepreneurs in this space grow faster with peer support. The statistic that we've come up with based on third-party data is that 82% of professionals in the health and fitness, health and wellness space grow faster with peer support. 82% of people, 82% of the population, thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs in this space, 82% of them have grown faster, reached their goals faster by just having peer support. They didn't have more knowledge. They weren't smarter. They didn't have more money. They didn't have answers. They didn't have a cheat sheet. They didn't have a better brand. What they had was peer support. They had access to relationships that allowed them to flatten the learning curve. Specifically, it allowed them to think differently about the inherent and inevitable setbacks that we will interact with, we will come up against when we're building and growing a business. And we're able to move past that. We're able to reframe what that setback looks like, and specifically able to ask the question that I just posed earlier, which is, what's this setback teaching me that success couldn't or can't? So you got to surround yourself with a network that makes resilience collective, not individual. Right? Resilience is a team sport. You don't have to figure it out on your own. It doesn't have to happen in a silo. So relationship, the key piece. So again, 3 R's. How do I build real resilience? You're going to focus on 3 key areas. You're going to focus on recovery. You're going to reflect. And you're going to build relationships. So recovery, reflection, relationships. So let's talk about how we can do this, right? As always, I want you to walk away with something you can sink your teeth into. I don't want to be another talking head. You're saying, Taylor, that's all well and good, but how the hell am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to shift my relationship, my mindset, my internal narrative and dialogue around resilience on the fly right now? I've been predisposed to all of this information. I live by the no pain, no gain mantra. I think I got to do it all by myself. I got to keep my head down. No one's going to help me. No one's going to show up for me. So how do I do it? Let's talk about some practical tools. How can we build resiliency into some small, low-hanging daily rituals? First is a morning check-in. Just ask yourself, how am I feeling? What's my bandwidth? You don't have to write that down if you don't want to. Take a beat. You're making coffee, getting a glass of water, making breakfast. Just bake it in. Take a second to ask yourself, how am I feeling? And or, what's my bandwidth? And what you'll do with that information is it allows you to be honest, gives you time to reflect, which again is one of the 3 R's we talked about in our framework. It also gives you the opportunity to adapt. So instead of just waking up and doing the same thing every single day, regardless of the input, regardless of how you feel, we're going to start to bake in small shifts in your system that allow you to access some information that you then can take action on. So if I ask myself, how am I feeling? Or if I ask myself, what's my bandwidth? And it's early in the morning, getting my day started, and if I'm honest with myself, and I say, my bandwidth feels pretty limited today. My brain's fried. I'm tired. I don't feel sharp. I'm stressed. I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. Well, then maybe it affords me the opportunity to take some small action. Now I don't have to clear my schedule. Maybe I can communicate with the people around me. I can communicate with the people in my house. Hey, I'm really feeling like today's a low bandwidth day. It'd be great if I could have some support. Can you help with dinner tonight? Can I just get 10 minutes to go on a walk outside and clear my head? Maybe communicate with the people at work, on your team. Hey guys, I'm not feeling particularly sharp today. Feeling pretty burnt out, low bandwidth day, not my best. I'm just going to be here to listen. Can you pick up the slack? Right? I'm going to lead this meeting, but I'd love support. If I don't pick up on all the points, whatever it is, I know that there's a million different ways to slice and dice that. And you're thinking about yourself and your life. And if that doesn't apply to you, it applies somewhere. Figure out where. So just take a second, morning check-in. How am I feeling? What's my bandwidth? Be honest, and then make a decision. Pivot. Adapt. Do something with that information. That's the key piece. That's how you build resilience into your day, into your life. That's how you shift your relationship with resiliency. Next, try to do something. Take a small break in the middle of the day. So a little midday reset. 5 or 10 minute walk. Again, sit back, take some breaths in your desk chair. Close your eyes for a minute. Take 10 deep breaths. Do a couple push-ups. Put a pull-up bar in your office. Do a couple pull-ups. Right? Take a little midday reset. Switch it up. That's what I like to call a pattern interrupt. Again, we want to be someone different. We have to do different things. Well, one of the things that we can do differently is to engage in some different activities. Again, small doses, 5 minutes. Go for a 5-minute walk. Get out in the sunshine for a second. If that's not doable, okay. Sit back. Take 10 breaths. Do some air squats. Right? Mix it up. Next, end of the day. So we got morning, we got midday, now we got end of the day. What do? I'm going to reflect. Right? I'm going to reflect on what did I learn today? So I either want you to be grateful for something, or I want you to think about a learning moment. And just want you to take a beat. It's going to be on the drive home. It's going to be when you're cooking dinner, while you're brushing your teeth. Again, I'm not advocating for some long, drawn-out process. Sit down, 20 minutes to this, long morning routines, nighttime. I get it. There's a million irons in the fire. There's 1,000 things to do. You can bake this in to the stuff you're already doing. It's about training yourself to think differently, take different actions. Again, how do I bake in the 3 R's? How do I focus on recovery a little bit more? How do I focus on reflection a little bit more and then take some action on that reflection? And then how do I focus on relationships a little bit more than what I'm doing right now, right? Brick by brick, small changes happen over long periods of time. So end of the day, just take some time to reflect. What did I learn? What am I grateful for? It's just going to rewire your brain. You're going to start to see those patterns, right? One of the greatest things I've ever done is to start every meeting that I have with anybody that I work with wins. Before we talk about anything else, before we talk about business and strategy and setbacks and all of the things, all the stress that's very real, all the metrics, all the money, all the stuff. Before we get into any of that, we start with wins. What's your wins? And what it's done for me, as well as I know for other folks that I have the opportunity to work with. But what it's done for me is I'm always looking for wins now, because I know that essentially every day I'm going to have to share my wins because my team's going to ask me, right? I'm going to be held accountable. And so I look for wins now. Well, what does that do? I see a hell of a lot more wins than I used to. Now I'm keyed in. Now I see them. Oh, that's a win. I'm actually looking for them. That's a win. I can share that in my next meeting. Okay, great. Let me write that down. Right? So what we're doing is we're training ourselves to pick up on the data that's already there, but we're reframing how we see it and how we process it and what we do with it. So it doesn't mean there's not setbacks. It doesn't mean that there's not shit that happens all the time, every single day, but I can see the wins. It also means that every single day I see the wins because I've trained myself to do it. And I've put myself in a position to be held accountable to recognizing those wins. So I want you to think about what gratitude looks like. I want you to think about what that reflection piece looks like for you. That's the hardest piece for people. People get excited about working on sleep more. People get excited about taking supplements. People get excited about exercise. Those are the things. What book can I read? What wearable device can I buy? What thing can I do? Can I sleep more? Can I track this? Those are all largely fun and exciting. Now they're simple, they're not easy, but people get excited about that. The reflection piece is what tends to hang us up the most. And then I want to leave you with a little bit of another piece of the puzzle here. I want you to think about how you can bounce forward. So I love this. This is from Sheryl Sandberg, and she talked about the idea of bouncing forward, which is a mindset, which is you don't just get back to baseline. You ask how the challenge made you better, right? So we're not bouncing back, right? Which would imply that we're bouncing back to where we started. It doesn't have to be the case. If we take time to reflect, if we learn and grow, if we do something with that data that we got, we're willing to make some changes to put some new things in motion, we don't actually have to bounce back to baseline. We can bounce forward. When we come back, when we've pivoted, adapted, adjusted based on that stress, we're actually further ahead than we were, right? So we're bouncing forward. And I love that reframe. That's a visual for me. I can see a starting line or where I was at. I can see that line in the sand. I don't have to bounce back to that line. I get to bounce forward. I get to be in front of where I was at. I'm still ahead, even though it feels like a setback, even though it actually might be a setback, literally, physically, emotionally. I can still bounce forward. So, final thought here is that I think grit without recovery is just stubbornness. I'm going to say that again. Grit without recovery is just stubbornness. But true resilience is really growth-minded. I think if we're honest, the person that we really want to be is someone that's truly resilient. It's someone that's growth-oriented. It's someone that doesn't just plow forward for no reason, who's hard-headed and stubborn, doesn't pay attention to what's going on, doesn't take support when it's offered, doesn't take time to reflect and grow. It's too hard-headed or stubborn to actually listen or pay attention to what's going on. They just put their head down. They grind ahead. When I think about that person, one, I think about a version of myself that I used to be. And I really don't like that person. I think about myself and I'm like, what an idiot. Who wants to be around that person? Who wants to be around the guy that everyone's like, just pay attention? Can't you see the writing's on the wall? There's so much opportunity here. There's so many wins happening, but you can't get out of your own way. If you pull your head out of the sand, if you wouldn't be so damn stubborn, if you wouldn't couch this as grit or discipline or drive or hustle and all this other BS, if you just call it what it is, which is stubbornness, ego, an inability to, or an unwillingness to get support, to pay attention, to ask hard questions of themselves as well as others. I don't want to be that person. I want to be truly resilient, because true resilience gets us where we want to go. True resilience allows us to grow, takes us where we want to go. That's the person I want to be. I hope you want to be that person as well. Join us for part 2 of this conversation. So if resilience is how we withstand setbacks, adaptability is how we thrive when things change. We're going to be talking about adaptability, which is the second part and the needed piece to make resilience really part of who you are. If you truly want to be growth-minded, if you don't like the person I just described either, then stay tuned. We're coming up in a couple of weeks with our part 2. We're talking about adaptability. We're talking about how it's an advantage and how you can keep thriving when things are changing all around you. You will not want to miss it. Last but not least, check us out, growth at enduranceminded.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can find all of our episodes there. They're all archived after 7 years and tons of episodes. You can find everything there if you want to go back, scroll through anything. You can also leave us a comment. Let us know what's working, what's not. We'd love to hear from you. So much of our content, so much of my passion and excitement for this podcast continues to be derived and drawn from the feedback that we get from our community. I can't thank you enough. So enduranceminded.com. Let us know what's going on. Leave us a comment at the bottom. Lastly, rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. You're holding your phone right now. You're looking at your computer. You're on a podcast platform listening to this. It's your favorite one. Rate us there. Tap the stars. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. You'll be alerted when we release new episodes every other Tuesday, and share this episode or any of your favorites with a friend. It'd mean the world to me. And we'll see you for part 2 of this resilience and adaptability podcast. And can't wait to see you there.